A huge thank you to Robert Bishop for sponsoring today's video on Patreon. Zurgo Stormrender versus Koma, Marneus Calgar, and Nine Fingers Keen. Got a few token builds at the table today. We have a 3-lander with plenty of surveil on our way up to our commander, so it's slow, but we'll just try it. Nine Fingers Keen starts the game with Leyline Axe in play, and had to mulligan down to 6, so only has 5 cards in hand on turn 0. A Wayfarer's Bauble for us while we've got tap lands, so we could risk getting into an untapped land next turn, then we could actually crack the Wayfarer's Bauble, but either way we're just going for our commander on turn 3, so nothing to do on turn 2 regardless. Let's go for the Shadowy Backstreet, and that shows us the Charismatic Conqueror, so might actually be tempted to go for that. Seeing an artifact enter from the Esper player, we're most likely to see artifacts in the early game from this guy because it's one of the best ways of ramping. Ancestral Call was exiled from the Koma player on the last turn, and another artifact, so yeah, I think it might be worth getting the Conqueror into play. Wanted to play with it ever since it released, but it's only just come out on Magic Online recently, so we'll test it here. Does mean it's likely that we're not getting down our commander next turn though. A creature this time, Talisman of Nurgle. Triggers on creatures as well luckily, and they do decide to tap it, so not only is this going to open up the way for our attacks, but it could also get us some tokens along the line. Gaia Engineer is going to tap for Simic Mana. Not likely to block with that, so we might as well tap it here. Okay, we get into Rabble Rousing, so we have to play a tap land for the turn, which means we can get down Wayfarer's Bauble. Won't be cracked unfortunately, or we could go Selfless Spirit. That is an Ophiomancer to get us into more tokens. Are we just going to have to take a turn off for the Bauble next turn? That would be annoying. We're going really slow here thanks to these tap lands, so I don't tend to run them. Tap lands that is, I always play the Surveil lands, but we tend to get into the fetches sooner than those. Yeah, we just have to keep it on top I think because it's a token generator. Play the Bauble as well. And then we've got a Vigilance creature, so I'll swing it in at the Simic player. Heraldic Banner. If they're eager for the 3 mana here to play something else, then they'll have to give us a token for it. And decide to allow it to come into play tapped. They have named white with the banner. Ancestral Vision removes its penultimate counter, so ready to draw next turn. A Cultivate to get some more land drops. Then play Solemn Simulacrum for even more ramp. Can tap that as well if he wants to, and he does. Everyone's tapping into the Conqueror. Interested to see how people play around this thing, with this being my first time playing it. So we know we're drawing into the Ophiomancer. I want to get Summoning Sickness away from Zurgo because we haven't managed to draw into any haste unfortunately. Hopefully we'll be able to swing in next turn. And again we'll swing in to the right. Sarevok's Tome for the Sultai player. So taking the initiative when it enters, and they can tap this down for 2 mana, although I'm sure it's going to enter tapped. So enters the Undercity, search for a basic, reveal it, put it into hand. Marneus Calgar into play for the first time, and gives us a token, that's nice. So now we've got something to swing in with and sacrifice during combat, even if we can't swing in with Zurgo. So we could go for Deadly Dispute next turn if we feel like it. It would be nice to get down Ophiomancer so that we can block this with something. It has double strike, so Death Touch won't matter, but it'll still regenerate itself, the snake, every turn. So anyhow, Ancestral Recall, or Ancestral Vision, is going to near enough refill the Simic player's hand. Koma into play for the first time by turn 5, and gives us another Vampire token. So just missing a sack outlet at the moment so that we can draw more cards. Obviously we want to be getting into land sooner than later. Doesn't seem as though anyone was keen to take the initiative either. We'll see if Solemn Simulacrum swings in. Won't mind getting a basic land myself here. Okay, doesn't take the initiative there either. So there is Voice of Victory. Yeah, let's just swing in here. We're going to get to swing in with Zurgo, so I don't have to go in with the Vampire tokens. We only need to sacrifice 1 token here. Take these both into the left, hold back the Vamps as chump blockers. Triggers Mobilize for the first time, and we'll just attack that into the left as well. And then go through to the damage phase, so make sure to deal the damage and take the initiative before we sacrifice this, because this can deal damage before we sacrifice it. It can still be in combat during the damage phase, so let the initiative resolve. which obviously triggers it. We venture into the dungeon, which allows us to search out a basic. Got plenty of white in hand, so I'll just go for a plains. So now we've got a land to make for the turn. I'll still go for the Deadly Dispute because it gives us a treasure token. And because it's during the damage phase, it means it was still attacking, so Zurgo triggers there as well for a card draw. We get another land. That is Dalcoven Encampment. That will make it more easy to swing in. First Strike and Death Touch on stuff. Morbid Opportunist is more card draw. So what do we want to do here? We could always set up the Ophiomancer with the Divine Visitation, start making angel tokens. We're going to have to discard down to hand size most likely. I'll play the plains because our opponents know about that. And I think, yeah, I'll just throw an Ophiomancer into play. I'm sure we'll get to crack that Wayfarer's Bauble at some point. And then as for discard, maybe Voice of Victory is going to be too slow, although it stops opponents doing stuff on our turn. It might have to be the Morbid Opportunist, unfortunately. Or maybe with the Ankle Shanker we can get rid of the Bonecane Butcher. I'll go for that. Difficult decision there. Ophiomancer triggers on every upkeep as long as we don't control a snake, which of course we don't at the moment. If we want to go for the Divine Visitation play, it means that Ophiomancer will make an angel every turn, but we'll have to get rid of the snake token in play first. And I think here, going to the Forge and putting a couple of plus counters on our commander will make it much easier to swing in with it. Our opponent was tapping all his mana down there, and he must have been accounting for this tapping for 2 mana. He does not have the initiative anymore. So instead plays Tatyova instead of whatever 6-drop he was just going for. And he does have a swamp in hand that he got out with the Undercity previously. Decides to tap Tatyova. The Conqueror is doing some work here. Plays a tap land into the Tatyova. Bloodline Pretender. Choose a creature type when it enters. And then it's a bunch of plus counter stuff. Chose Astartes as the creature type, which I'm guessing is, yep, the commander. Wanted to come in untapped, so again we get a vamp token. Our opponents will eventually just give up on this as we get into the mid game and start giving us the tokens we want. And you have to assume that the commander, as a 4/5 double strike, is going to be turning into the left. He's only got 5 mana held up for the tokens, so can't make tokens with it yet. Doesn't swing in at all, curiously. Koma was tapping down a bunch of mana with a full grip there and is now deciding to go through to combat maybe. An extra planar lens, and if they get rid of a forest here, they have tapped down a forest into it. Yavimaya, does this count as a basic forest? I'm not sure, we'll soon test that. Anyway, he is getting rid of a forest. Oh no, it's a land with the same name. It's not just basics. It's always basics that you exile with this, so I thought that's what it referenced, but it's lands with the same name specifically. So basically has double mana on his basic forests. Taps down 8 mana in total for a last march of the Ents. 5 cards in hand and has 8 power in play. So if the Esper player can do something, he better do it now. So gets a bunch of creatures there. E-Witness could just grab back last march of the Ents. Mana Dork. Multani is a 6/6 at the moment. Karametra's Acolyte is going to tap for a lot of mana. Tender Wild Guide, I don't know. Can't pay the offspring on it. Can put a plus counter and it's a Mana Dork. Galter, a 12/12. And Vigor. That will actually... yeah, that's actually a good hit from our opponent because it denies the combat damage. I was just thinking of getting down Ankle Shanker and swinging in over here so that we're encouraging them to make blocks. Might want to tap down a bunch of stuff so that we don't get the tokens. Eternal Witness is instead pointed at the Ancestral Vision, curiously enough. I would have thought last march of the Ents would have been way better for him to pick up. We got a couple of tokens out of that, decided to leave Galter and the Vigor untapped. Plays a land and gains a life. And it's funny, with the Rabble Rousing we can actually get the Hideaway card straight away near enough because we're going to control 10 creatures without the attack trigger on this. So it might just have to be Rabble Rousing that we go after and hopefully get into something decent on the Hideaway cost. The 8/12 swings in at us as we would expect. We do have a Death Toucher, so I'll just throw the Death Toucher in the way. I mean, damage is denied anyway thanks to the Vigor, but we're going to get the Ophiomancer snake back into play anyway. They do take the initiative from us, and each opponent loses a life when we do that as well, because obviously the snake wasn't attacking, but Zurgo triggers on the tokens going down as well. regardless of if they're attacking or not. And if the board stays intact after the rabble rousing, that will actually set us up with Divine Visitation as well. We can get a bunch of angels into play and make our opponents' lives more difficult, fly over a bunch of this stuff. Anyway, they hit us and get some Koma's coils into play. Deciding to tap them down into the Conqueror. Except one Koma's coil, they leave it untapped. And discard down to hand size, a couple of lands and an arcane signet. Alphiomancer replaces the snake. So basically it's the more tokens we can get into play the better, really. Never managed to crack that way for his bauble, otherwise we could have gone Talisman Land and Rabble Rousing here. But I think it's just going to have to be the Rabble Rousing. And the more we swing in over here, it does mean that we're going to be putting plus counters on stuff. You can see the plus counter on the Koma now, thanks to us throwing 1 point of damage in the way of that. Something good on the hideaway, please. Carrion Feeder, I think we're better off just going for the Zulaport Cutthroat, really. I was hoping for some kind of one-sided wrath there. Let's go through to combat, and it's all these tokens going into the right, and then these two going into the left because he's wide open still. So let's put Rabble Rousing on the stack first, so that it can see this mobilise trigger. I'm thinking if anyone's got a board wipe, they may well be playing it now, thanks to the Simic player. As many creatures as we've got, they're not all that scary at the minute. And we'll just take the token into the right as well. There's only so many blocks they can make. They're actually encouraged to make blocks here because they can buff with the Vigour. And that means that the tokens will die and we'll draw cards. So we do control a bunch of creatures. Best thing we could get was the Zulaport Cutthroat, I think. So cast without paying the mana cost. And now we've at least got some aristocrat shenanigans going on, which is what the deck is loosely based around. Had to put away a sack outlet onto the bottom of the library though. So we haven't got into everything we need. But this is a bracket 2 game, so not exactly trying too hard with this list. Just a fun token build. They are making blocks, so we are going to draw some cards here. And that means there's going to be some Zulaport triggers also. Hopefully there's not too much trample over here. This is the Multani's trample. I know the Commander is. Galter, yeah, that has trample as well. Vigor has trample, everything of note has trample really. So let's see, we've got card draw. Let's put Zulaport on the stack. We have retaken the initiative. So maybe we should go for the Scry after all. I think we get Scry in the other room. Yeah, Lost Well gives us Scry 2 before we draw. I think I might go for that. Try and get closer to some kind of board wipe that we'd be after. Okay, Blood Artist. And Skull Clamp. Difficult to say no to those. If we survive until our next turn, and if our board stays somewhat intact, we should be able to draw a bunch with Clamp and get into what we need. Got more chance of that than it being in the top 4 with Zurgo. So I'll keep both of these on top. So we know the top 2 cards we're drawing into, and then we've got a couple of mystery cards, Idol of Oblivion, Lightning Greaves. Greaves will be happy of after a board wipe. So yeah, the mana's just been a bit janky this game. We haven't been able to land Selfless Spirit thanks to a lack of ramp. So it could be that the board gets wiped. We've only got Koma down to 29. So let's give up on Idol of Oblivion. Morbid Opportunist, we seem to be drawing enough cards. And then it seems as though, even though we're up against blue players, they don't seem to be wanting to interfere with us, so do we risk getting rid of this? If there's a board wipe, then this will be useless. Are we going to play it next turn anyway? I'm not sure we'll have chance, so it's risky. I'll get rid of the Selfless Spirit though. If we're getting our aristocrat effects into play, then we might not care about the board getting wiped anyway. The basic swamp played into Tatyova for a life gain and a card. It's unfortunate that it's Zulaport that came into play, not Blood Artist, because I could show my opponents that I'm going to be pointing all the triggers at Koma, which would encourage people to wipe the board, but they might not wipe it into Zulaport. Nine Fingers certainly isn't going to do it now that he's got his Commander into play. Gives us another token at least. Space Marine Scout for the 40k player. First Strike Vigilance on a 2-1. When it enters, if an opponent controls more lands than you, search for a plains, put it in tapped. And that was the correct type, so a plus counter goes onto the Pretender for the first time. But the Simic player gets to keep his board intact again. Did suspend the Ancestral Vision again, but we're a few turns away from that. See if he's got some kind of overrun. A Harrow being cast, so sacrificed his, what is this, Terminal Moraine, in order to get a couple of lands into play untapped. Probably trying to buff Multani as much as he can. Got 6 cards in hand after this. And then generates, I think that was 15 mana from Karametra's Acolyte. 22 mana once he's tapped down all his forests. Primordial Hydra he taps out into, so 25 power on that. I don't think he's got a means of giving it haste. Might be mistaken. So there's no Crater Hoof or anything at least. He'll have to be careful about a swing back from us because he doesn't know if we've got some kind of overrun effect. We might have Cathar's Crusade or something like that he doesn't know about. Haven't really focused on overrun as it happens. But he's just deciding if he wants to tap this down or not. Looks as though he's decided not to. Yeah, so gives us another token, which is at least something to block with. The Lifelinkers effectively block 2 damage, as long as these can actually deal damage in combat. So again, goes in at us. We'll probably... we don't necessarily have to block Koma. We've got a lot of damage coming in towards us, as we expected. That's 25 with these alone, plus 9. We can just chump the Koma's coils. Alright, yeah, so it's all coming in at us. 25 damage from these two, plus the 9 damage is 34. And they're the tramples. That means that we have to block all the Koma's coils, which we probably would have done anyway. Doesn't matter where we put the Death Toucher because the Death Touch doesn't work anyway. So the Koma's coils are definitely all blocked. And that means we have to work out if we want to block anything from here or not. It's probably best leave it as many tokens in play so that we can make as many citizens as possible. Like Rabble Rousing just kind of pays into itself across the course of a few turns. We'll be on 16 points of commander damage. This hasn't gained double strike or anything, has it? Doubt there's much we could do about it anyway. So that's 34 damage we're taking, minus the 3. Is 31 damage, and then there'll be Zulaport Cutthroat triggers as well. Yeah, we really want to be getting into a sack outlet next turn, really. That's why we kept the Skull Clamp. Alright, we'll just declare blockers like that. So we go down to 6 and 16 points of commander. Commander doesn't really matter at this point. Zulaport on the stack first. And then they take the initiative from us again. And Zurgo will do some pings in this instance because they weren't attacking. Now if we go up to one of the third floors here, we've got a player can lose 5 life, goad a creature, create a treasure token. I don't think goading will really matter at this point. The treasure token might make a difference, seeing as how we've got so few mana. I can't remember if we really made that much use of the Surveil lands in the early game, did we? Can't remember if we cleared anything off the top. I don't think we did. They go for the Scry with the Undercity as well. Yeah, it'd be nice to make sure the Esper player doesn't interfere next turn. Get down the Voice of Victory and the Blood Artist into a sack outlet, but like I've said a few times, we're not actually getting into the sack outlet, which means we're going to have to put more mana into Skull Clamp to try and find one. Anyway, they get more Koma's Coil tokens, which means the Conqueror continues to do work. We can see why I was excited to play this one ever since it released. Glad we got to see how good it is this game. The more tokens they give us here, the worse Rabble Rousing is going to be for them. They've got a couple of mana held up, so could still interfere with us off the mana dork, so they've got mana here as well. So we go back up to 10, still on that 16 points of commander, and takes it round to our turn. Priority being held up by the Sultai player and by the Esper player. Top decking into a sack outlet would be excellent here. Unfortunately not. It is a land we can get in untapped if we need to though. So do we just risk getting down a Blood Artist, and if someone interferes then so be it. I suppose that's what we'll have to do. If we get down Blood Artist and then go straight in for the swing, we'll probably lose some creatures in combat, which means we could draw some cards and try and get into a sack outlet. Could allow us into playing this after all. Then play a sack outlet, sack everything and drain everyone, hopefully. I'm just going to shock in the Godless Shrine now just in case it's relevant, although I don't think there's a better land we're going to get into. This is bracket 2, so there's no Ancient Tomb or anything like that. It's probably safe to do that. Don't want to kick myself, lacking on a mana. So shock, go through to combat, and turn nearly everything in sideways at the Simic player. Pull back the non-token creatures. Don't think getting the additional token with Zurgo really matters here. So we're swinging in with 12 creatures. Rabble Rousing's going to do something. The Esper player still holding back. This could all be playing into his hand that we are focusing on each other. Gives him plenty of time to catch up down the line. Anyway, we make the 12 citizen tokens. And does decide to make some blocks, that's good. Or at least one. This does mean that we're drawing a lot of cards to the commander. Making 6 blocks so far. Also triggering our aristocrats. So maybe he's thinking if we drain our opponents more with the aristocrats, our opponents have to get involved and help get rid of us. Anyway, they block with a lot of stuff there, so there's going to be some triggers. And there we go. The Sultai player was tapping down blue mana to try and interfere. A single green isn't a fog, surely. Tamio's safekeeping. Okay. Gives his own stuff, or his own commander, hexproof and indestructible. Gains 2 life with that as well. So he's probably just doing everything he can to stem the bleeding from the aristocrats. And there is a bazillion triggers. The initiative is taken as well, so these are all bleeds and drains. And I think we might be able to get it here. When the format has made it really difficult for combat decks to work, it's good to see that you can have a pseudo-combat deck that can still win with damage, even if the damage doesn't necessarily come from combat itself. And we might see a crash from the client here. I don't think the board's too complicated, but it's still bugging out. Blood Artist is targeted, so obviously that all goes on the biggest threat at the table, apart from us. Oh, I said they were all pings and drains. Actually, Zurgo's tokens were attacking, so that's actually draw triggers, like I said before. The initiative, I don't think we need to have a player lose 5 life here, do we? There's 16 drain triggers on the stack, which means we'd only have to do 11 over here, and Zurgo would help towards that as well. So yeah, with the initiative I'm just going to make a treasure, I think. Oh, we should have gone to Forge if we wanted to enter the trap, so it is just stash then. Interesting that the initiative came into play after the Sultai player brought it to the battlefield. Well, we still haven't drawn into a sack outlet yet, so I might be glad that we kept hold of the Skull Clamp, and yeah, that's probably one of the better ones we could have drawn into actually. Warren Soul Trader gives us mana as well. Never really got to show off the Warren Soul Trader on the channel. Maybe we'll get to do it here. Not worried about paying life into it while we've got Blood Artist and Zulaport in play, because we still end up gaining life to it. So I think this knocks the Simic player down to 1. The other player down to 19. Our friend on the left down to 12. So now then, that treasure might actually make a difference here, because we can go for the Voice of Victory after all. So I'm glad I didn't discard it. See if they want to counter this. The Esper player holding up priority, but just passes the turn. Simic player, we'll see what he does. Yep, and now we're free to do whatever we want, because it has entered play, so Warren Soul Trader. And it's just a case of sacking all the tokens and draining our opponents out. We'll make mana along the way with the treasure tokens. None of our opponents can do anything apart from activate abilities. So I'll just sack the tapped tokens first of all, can get rid of the snake as well because it will be remade. Zurgo is now going to help drain the opponents as well. I'll point Blood Artist down the middle because the other effects go for every opponent. So Blood Artist can focus on the player with the highest life total. So down he goes. And this player decided to scoop. He's actually just sent me a message, so we'll have a look at that in a minute. And yeah, the other player scoops as well, so I see the writing on the wall. He said, your deck is cool in some ways, but pretty lame that it ends in the same Zulaport, Blood Artist. We've seen it a billion times from black-based token decks. One more thing, so this will be interesting. Nice review of the deck. I wonder if he sent the Simic player a similar review, because the Koma deck was certainly not a pre-con level deck. Now, he's referring to bracket 2 is supposed to be pre-con level. I think mine was far more that than the Koma players was. As powerful as the board was in the end, it wasn't full of Last March of the Ents and Ancestral Visions, massive Multani, massive Galter, ramping ahead like crazy with extra planar lens and things like that. As for the fetches and the jewels and all that, people have often had an issue with that, which I think's a bit weird to be honest. Like, lands is just your currency to play the game. We ended up with like 5 lands or something like that by the end of the game. I mean, it's not like we were ramping ahead like crazy like the Simic guy was. He had mostly basics, but had way more mana than us. So what good did our fetches and duels do us, apart from just allowing us to play the game because we had the correct colours. Personally, even if I was in a janky bracket 1 game, I wouldn't care if someone had a bunch of duels and stuff, because all it means is that you just get to play, as opposed to sitting there with the colours that you don't need. I'd much rather that my opponents got to play the game, as opposed to sitting there waiting for their correct basic to show up. So I think that's a stupid criticism. As for like the aristocrat stuff, yeah, we've seen aristocrats a million times, but the commander is an aristocrat commander, so I'm not sure how you expect people to build Zurgo Stormrender. Like, it bleeds your opponents when the tokens die, so what else are you going to do with it? But yeah, as ever, you can please some of the people some of the times, and not all the people all of the times, especially when it comes to whiny Magic the Gathering players. We can't agree on a ban list, we can't agree on brackets, we can't agree on what's a pre-con level game and what isn't, etc. and so forth. Everyone's going to have differing opinions, and frankly, I don't care anymore. I'll point out the bracket that we're meant to be in here and there, and you can discuss it in the comments if you care at all. But all I'm ever trying to do is be transparent and get good games in for all of you, so hopefully you all enjoyed it. I'm glad that we got a good showing with the Zurgo Stormrender. Nearly got taken out by the Simic deck, but I'm glad that we got to pull it back in the end. If there's any commanders that you want to see more from, then be sure to let me know in the comments section as ever, and a massive thank you to the patrons for their support. As always, I'm Tribalkai. Thank you for watching.